Good morning. I'm Betty Casey I'm the editor. I'm going to start again. There's a little lag time sometimes with technology. So I want to introduce myself. I'm Betty Casey with TulsaKids Magazine. And I'm here this morning with Dr. Michael Morris from OSU-Tulsa. We've been teaming up for the past few weeks to do a series of Facebook Live interviews about COVID-19 and how the pandemic has affected us in different areas of our lives, from talking to kids about it, to stress in your relationships, even eating, how it has affected our eating patterns. So if you want to see any of the past 3 sessions, you can go to OSU's Facebook or go to our Tulsa Kids Facebook or our website to watch those. So I want to welcome Dr. Michael Morris. And he is a clinical assistant professor of economics at OSU-Tulsa. Morris grew up in Tulsa before earning his undergraduate degree in economics and accounting at Southwestern University and his Ph.D. in economics from the University of Pennsylvania. After working at the University of New Orleans, he returned to Tulsa to work at OSU-Tulsa and OSU Stillwater. His research interests are in family and behavioral economics, as well as in econometrics. Morris has published papers looking at savings choices, debt burdens, property tax equity, education choices, as well as joint work regarding children's resilience. Morris has 2 children, 15 and 17, and his wife is also OSU Tulsa faculty working in human development and family studies. So he is a wealth of information for our families. So welcome, Dr. Morris.
Good morning. Well, glad to be here.
Okay, I have the first question I want to start with is it has been a couple of months since the Safer at Home order and the CARES Act. Are we far enough out to measure the effects of these things, and is it too soon to see a big picture of how the virus and responses to it have affected the economy?
Well, I mean, it's clear that the virus and responses have had an effect on the economy. It certainly was quick to see that. I mean, the contraction in the economy, the spike in unemployment, the disappearance of jobs. So that's already been measured. In fact, just yesterday, the NBER declared that we are officially in a recession, which I know might seem kind of silly to make it official, but it was really fast for them. Usually they wait 2 whole quarters of watching declining growth before they do that. So yeah, so the idea that it's had a negative impact, we can clearly tell and actually see a little bit of the turnaround. As far as a big picture on what caused it, how much was virus, how much was lockdown, and these different decisions, I think we're just beginning to look at that at different cases, both around the United States and globally, to try to kind of see what maybe worked better and didn't work and so on. We're just beginning to look at that, I think.
Mm-hmm. So are we headed toward a depression? Is this recession, do you think things will really start turning around, or that concerns me. I haven't heard that we're officially in a recession.
Oh, yeah, I don't think it will be a depression or something like, we saw in the Great Depression in the 1930s. And so partly because most indicators are, we probably have bottomed out. So I know the last downturn got labeled the Great Recession.
Right.
But we've actually probably had a bigger GDP downturn. We'll see. We've certainly had a higher spike in unemployment than we had in 2008, 2009. So I don't know what name this will get, but we've probably seen the worst of it. How quickly things come back, that's really to be determined still.
Yeah, I think there's such a huge, obviously human and emotional element to money and economics and the way that works. And I think we sometimes forget that. So it may depend on how safe people feel in terms of going out and going to get a haircut to sort of predict that recovery?
Yeah, I mean, so a big part of it is just how much the regular economic activity can resume, and it's interconnected, right? So salons will come back only when people choose to use them, right? And that's a confidence issue. It's a personal issue, and yeah, and different parts of the country will be different. I think what you might be comfortable doing in a place that's seen fewer cases might be different than what you'd be comfortable doing in a place that maybe had a heavier burden. And that's just going to take it will take some time, and then just how fast, we'll see. And a lot of that then is going to be determined by, is there any kind of a new outbreak, a new flare up. I know it's come down a whole lot in the New York City area, which was the biggest and hardest hit area. Most other places in the country are kind of more stable-ish, I would say. So it certainly isn't going away. But if it can stay like that, then you can kind of keep doing what we're doing. And I think you'll see people more comfortable doing more and more. But if there's another big flare up, kind of all bets are off.
Right. Yeah, it's such an unpredictable and unknown time. But as we do reopen and go back to work, are there still reasons to worry or be cautious about what the virus could do in terms of our jobs, our savings and taxes, those kinds of economic issues that families deal with every day?
Yeah, so jobs are going to be, probably number one, right? If you kept a job and kept a paycheck, then your individual life, you smooth and ride through the stressors. It's a completely different if you lost that. Like I said, most of the unemployment rate is trending back in a good direction. It's still really high. The real question will be, how many jobs of people who are furloughed and let go are they actually able to be brought back quickly? And how many of those basically transition to you're really unemployed and have to go find a new job? And in this market, that's probably going to be a slow process. So is there a reason to be concerned that it could get worse? Industry by industry, we'll kind of see, right? So I can speak, I'm in education, right? So, we offered online. We're waiting to see everybody come back this fall, but and so far it looks like students are, and they're fairly comfortable with what we've been offering. But, the back of your mind always says, well, if half of them change their mind, then, things are different. And so, and I'm sure a lot of businesses are like that,
Right.
Savings should be fine. I mean, the idea with savings is, any money you need short term, rainy day funds, emergency funds, things you've been saving for short term purchases, cars, maybe college, depending on how old your kids are, like mine, who are about to get there. That should be parked somewhere really, really safe, not in the stock market or things like that. And that will be safe. And your other money, if you've got a long time horizon, you can kind of not look and let it ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's people do get worried with uncertainty, I think, but just sort of trying to stay calm about it. If you mentioned possibly a spike or a second wave, what can families and small business owners do to maybe prepare for another spike, or maybe a bigger spike? Maybe we haven't even seen it yet in this part of the country. I don't know.
Well, we haven't seen a really big, overwhelming spike. I mean, they prepped for it quite well, actually, in hospital capacity and things like that. So hopefully we won't. As far as preparations, well, if you've been following it and paying attention, as a family or small business owner, then you kind of know a little bit what that could or would look like, and you can kind of just start to think about it. So for your business, think about what were businesses able to do and what couldn't they do if more stay-at-home type orders showed up, and what can you do to kind of better prepare for that, right? So could you still maybe even if we put restrictions on, maybe it's likely we still allow curbside or something like this, and so can you maybe up your online presence, be it on Facebook or whatever? Can you figure out, kind of think about what worked and what didn't and kind of file that away. And you have a little bit of time to at least kind of have that contingency in place, financially. Are you still, I mean, did you survive this? Are things coming back or not? And if they are, can you kind of build any kind of a little bit of solid, a little bit of cushion, in there? But I mean, if you've already been struggling, that's drained, that can be difficult. And same thing for families, what does your job situation look like? Can you, do you feel good about your rainy day or emergency fund? And if not, can you kind of prop that up? Can you at home, do you have masks? Can you get them, right? Do you want to make a few more? I mean, you've got some time right now to think about it, hey, I think I can order wipes. Maybe I should, buy a cup, and just kind of,
Right.
You've got some time to be more ready. Yeah.
Right. We learn more new information all the time. So I think that helps as we plan for the future. And you mentioned the pivoting and the different things that businesses are doing or families are doing. I think we're all dealing with that. Tulsa Kids as a small business, I know we lost our distribution locations essentially. So we had to pivot, and I think publishers around the country that are parenting publications, we've been meeting every week to discuss, new alternatives and new ways to get our magazines out, which of course is more digital, but you do come up with some creative options that, when you think about it, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. So.
No, and I think we'll find some of those stick. Even as things go back to normal, the things that seem to work well, I think businesses will hold on to pieces of that.
Right. Yeah, I think it's something we can look at as a way to prepare for the future, but also as something we might continue to use in different forms. Same with teaching. So what do you think, just being a predictor, what sectors of Oklahoma's economy are likely to recover the fastest and which more slowly, do you think?
Well, I mean, just kind of funny question. I mean, to recover the fastest is probably first you had to be hit pretty hard. Some sectors, probably, held on pretty well. And so maybe they'll rebound the fastest, but the change might not be that great. The ones that get hit the hardest are, anything in the hospitality industry, travel, restaurants, other face-to-face things, and then, fitness, gyms, and stuff like that. I think, probably some local hospitality could come back. I'm hopeful pretty quick if our numbers stay low. I mean, I'm kind of witnessing people becoming more comfortable dining outside. Summer's good for that. Adopting things. And if the numbers stay slow, I think people are interested in trying to do some more of that, but you just, within their own cautious nature. I think probably the hotel industry and tourism, bringing in big concerts and shows to the BOK and the performing arts and all of the business that brings, that's going to be a long time coming. Because I mean, those big group, everybody loud, everybody packed in is an environment that is just conducive to trouble.
Right. And I think sometimes we think of those types of things as something we can let go of, as not essential to us.
Well, it's essential to the people who that's how they make their living. But you're right, it's a luxury good, right? It's something I go do for fun, right? It's not my shelter. It's not my food. It's it's a luxury entertainment type of thing.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, I don't really need to do that. And no, you're right.
Right, but it's not a luxury to the musicians. And my neighbor, her sister is on tour with Frozen. She's a pianist, and she's been living with her sister because she's essentially homeless because she tours all year. So she'll be there probably until next year. So it's not good for those folks.
That's probably not coming back this season. Maybe next season. They're going to wait the fallout, I'm sure. So that's going to take probably the longest,
Right.
big event type of
Yeah.
things. And airlines. I mean, I think the airline industry is starting to come back, and and Tulsa's got a big airline presence. It's more
Yeah.
on the maintenance side and business side, but if you're flying less jets and they're buying less jets, it's going to reverberate. And they're not going to be back to running all the routes they've been using, I don't think, real soon.
Right. Right. Yeah. And again, the uncertainty, and we'll see how that goes. For those of us who have been laid off from a job in the past few months, would now be a good time to maybe leverage that time to possibly go back to school, or look at possibly training for a different career? I know, you can go to school online at OSU-Tulsa or Tulsa Tech, or what, there are many options.
Yeah,
what about going back to school?
That's true. I mean, at a point of unemployment, when you're between jobs, it's a good time to take a look at your career trajectory, what you like doing, what you're interested in doing, and if you're on the path you wanted and you just want to get back into that industry, maybe not. But if you're thinking it would have helped me to get this degree, maybe you look at getting that master's. Or if you haven't finished your degree, maybe you think about finishing it up, because you've got some time. And like you said, right now the online options are more than ever. So so if you've got the financial resources to be able to fund it, and you probably have more time, and you can focus. You don't want to undertake that and do poorly. But it can be a really good time to kind of, before you re-enter the job market, to come back with new skills, a new degree, or like you said, even maybe a career shift because you finished up something you were working on. So that can be good. And in fact, in a lot of graduate programs, you actually see a spike, a little uptick in enrollment sometimes when the economy is struggling.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know this, but this thought came into my head. Like at OSU Tulsa, can you go on and talk to an admissions counselor? Do you need to make an appointment? I mean, can you go online and do that? How does that work?
Yes, I mean they can accommodate whatever you need. You can start by just making a phone call into the admissions office, and they will get you with an admissions counselor. And like everybody else, we're living in the Zoom world and a phone call world, so you can pretty much handle all you need over the phone, or if you want face-to-face, they can do it Zoom. They are just opening OSU facilities back up. They're not open to the just general public and dropping in yet, but they're working toward that. I think coming, I don't know, I get different dates by July. They're certainly in Stillwater getting ready for students coming back by August, and they're putting in a whole lot of protocols for that. And OSU Tulsa is going to mirror those. But yeah, you can get all your questions answered and get enrolled and figure out what you might want to do for the fall.
Okay, speaking of jobs and industries, are there jobs that probably have suffered more? I think you mentioned obviously some of the travel industry and those kinds of things that obviously have suffered more during this pandemic. But also, what jobs might people be looking toward that might be okay, that might be maybe better, and in terms of employment as we move forward?
Well, I mean, the jobs that have been the most okay tend to be professional office related services where you could work at home and you could do it video and things like that, things that required less face-to-face from either customers or to get the job done.
Right.
Some manufacturing has really struggled. Some has been good. Are you deemed essential? Did you get in? Were you able to keep the workers healthy? But then, hospitality and those industries that, like we've talked about, have been really hurt. Interestingly, healthcare, has seen has struggled some. I mean, because for a long time, all those regular medical things that you would do, people weren't doing and were slow to come back. And so That's one I think will come back. It's a big part of the economy, and will probably come back relatively quickly and still be good. But most medical practices have suffered, actually.
Yeah, I know Hillcrest furloughed a lot of people, and that surprised me, but then makes sense when people aren't going in for their regular visits.
Yeah, and any optional outpatient surgeries. I mean, for a while you weren't allowed to do them, and even then, maybe I don't need that right now, sort of.
Right.
And so I think those will come back and still be good jobs, but it is one that sometimes surprises people that it's an industry that has actually been hurt quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. So here's something that all parents worry about: retirement, children's college funds. Will those things be significantly impacted looking forward through the years? I mean, you have, all of us might be in different places. You have children going to college fairly soon. I'm worried about retirement funding. So we're all in different places, but how much impact does this pandemic have on those kinds of savings? And should we be using them if maybe we don't have money? Should we be using those accounts?
Right. Well, so there's several questions. Should I be using my retirement account if I'm unemployed and I'm struggling to make ends meet? The general advice is you'd really rather not. Can you tighten your belt? Can you find ways around it? But on the flip side, borrowing from your 401k or using your retirement account, if the alternative is starting to run up unsustainable credit card debt or something, is probably a better option. And then, when can I get some earnings back and start to save it back? And so it really depends on your circumstances. On, do you really have to tap into it? What are your other alternatives? And like I said, it can be better than some, but you'd rather not. If you're not in that situation, now I'm looking out into the future. My advice for most savings in investment is to start by thinking time horizon. Number one, is this money I'm planning to need relatively soon? So my 15, 17-year-old, we're getting close to college, or, is it back when I have, 3, 4, 5, and I know I've got a decade, more until I'm going to need this money. Retirement, again, how far out is retirement? And that makes a difference because you've got more time to ride out the waves, and so to earn higher returns, you have to take higher risk, because otherwise everybody would take the high return, no risks. To attract money into higher risk, there has to be a higher return that accompanies that, but then it has higher risk, So we saw a huge stock market decline, and then quite surprisingly to me, is kind of already back. So, if you rode that out, your portfolio is the same. If you really struggled writing that out, the other thing I think beyond time horizon for people to think about is what is their risk tolerance, risk preference. When you're writing that out, is it something that you're stressed, you can't sleep at night, it's bothering you? And then you probably should think about a more conservative approach. There's some balance that you're okay with, not looking at that money, and keep putting it in and think, this will ride out. I don't need this money for 10 years and it'll probably be good. And if you have anything sitting in risky investments that you do need in the short term, that's not particularly good idea ever, because you take a 50% loss, you've got 1 year to get it back, and it's not going to happen. If you take a big loss and I've got 10, 15 years to get it back, historically, you're almost sure it will.
Right. So, yeah, it sounds like some of these financial conversations are very difficult to have, I think, with couples. And I think it sounds like sitting down, planning, looking at your budget realistically, and talking about it might be a good idea with your partner, or if you're a single parent.
Really good idea. And like you said, with the couples in a family environment, you need everybody on board, or it tends to not work very well. If you have very different ideas about what your goals are or what you want to achieve, you're going to have regular conflict until you can come to some sort of place where everybody can get to an agreement or be on board enough with, we'll do this with this money and this with this or whatever. You know.
Very good advice. Yes. Talk to your partner. If you, about finances, it's always a source of stress and ongoing conflict when you don't.
Yes.
Okay, I think those are all the questions I had. Is there anything you'd like to add? I know, you know, OSU-Tulsa has been wonderful to provide professionals for us during this time. Any last words of wisdom you'd like to throw out there to our?
No, I think we've covered it. You know, I do, you know, encourage people just in general to, you know, really adopt the easy to adopt practices to try to keep things safer. You know, putting on masks when you're around people or in environments and things like that. Just because it's not a political statement or get caught into any of that. It's just, this was really painful, you know, and if we recover well, it can be a lot better, but that really hinges on things staying safe. And if you can adopt the really cheap, low cost, non-disruptive types of measures, and if that can help keep things at bay so we don't have any more things, it's just so worth it. Because if it gets really bad and out of hand, the only options are really painful, both in either loss of life or economic damage, either in a lockdown, or if everybody gets afraid, like we were talking about, even if you don't, then they're not coming to your businesses. And so, you know, the more everybody can just adopt the easy, cheap to adopt, social distancing, non-spreading types of things, that can be hugely beneficial for the economy and families.
That is, do those simple healthy things, hand washing, social distancing, and wearing a mask, and we can help our economy. I love it. Thank you. All right, thank you. This is our last in this series of COVID conversations. And I really appreciate OSU Tulsa and all their help in providing these great, wonderful professionals for us to offer their advice and expertise. So thank you, Dr. Morris, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too. I was glad to do it.